Imagine if you and I were opening packs at the local game card shop, and both pulled the same card, but mine is simply stronger than yours. Not because I did a better job playing my strategy or building my deck, but because I got lucky when opening packs. Most trading card games don't work this way, but if, for example, we both open a Blue Eyes White Dragon in Yu-Gi-Oh, then we both get a Blue Eyes White Dragon. If we both pull a Charizard from the latest Pokemon set, then we both get the same Charizard. But Chaotic broke this mold. Fans are still arguing about whether it was a brilliant or terrible design choice, which is why today I want to talk about Chaotic's most controversial mechanic, randomized stats. In Chaotic, every creature has four major stats listed on the left side of the card: courage, power, wisdom, and speed. Although they are easy to miss in a brief overview of gameplay like in my last video, they are vitally important during a battle. Many attacks compare them, challenges compare stats, initiative often based on your stats. Winning and losing can come down to your stats. Now, here's where things get weird. If two players open the same creature card, those stats weren't guaranteed to match. You could both pull a KR, but my KR might have more courage, yours might have higher power, mine might simply just be better overall. The game literally printed different versions of the exact same card, not just an alternate art or foil like most games, but different stats that change the way it plays in game, and that's something almost no other major card game has ever done. Now, before I start ripping this mechanic a new one, I want to give the developers their flowers because I understand why this design was appealing to them. Because chaotic decks are exceedingly small. You get 2 copies of every card, with unique creatures being limited to a single copy. This causes players to quickly have bloated collections of duplicates. Imagine opening your 5th copy of the same creature. In most card games, that's disappointing, but in Chaotic, that 5th copy might actually be exciting. You might roll better stats. And because of that, every pack still has the potential to surprise you, and that is a brilliant idea in theory. I think randomized stats are at their absolute best in kind of like the playground meta, where you as a young kid, you bring your stats to your friend, and you notice that your KR might have higher courage than your friend's KR, and that makes it your KR. And because of that, your collection now feels personal. Every pack feels unique, every card feels unique, and I think that's what the developers were going for. But then we get to competitive play, and this is where things start falling apart because in competitive games they thrive on consistency. If I lose a game of Yu-Gi-Oh, I can usually define why. I misplaced, my deck wasn't optimized, and in most cases, me and my opponent had access to the same cards, except for things like branded. The playing field is level, but Chaotic changes that equation with its randomized stats. We can both show up with the same deck list, same creatures, same gear, same attacks, same everything, but one player simply has better stat rolls, not because of any skill or preparation on their part, but because they simply got lucky when opening packs. That's a hard pill to swallow for someone who values skill in the game. To understand that feeling, imagine if another game tried this. Let's use Yu-Gi-Oh! And Blue Eyes White Dragon. Imagine Konami printed Blue Eyes with randomized attack values. One copy has 2800 attack, another has 3000, and so on and so forth. Suddenly, every competitive Blue Eyes player is hunting the perfect copies. The strongest versions become expensive. Players feel pressured to upgrade. The tournaments become partially trimmed by who owns the best versions, which turns the entire game into essentially a gacha pull on your packs. That's essentially what Chaotic did, and not just with one card, but with every creature. I think the idea of randomized stats is so fascinating is that the mechanic both succeeds and fails for the exact same reason. The randomness creates variety, but also inconsistency. It makes collecting exciting, but makes competition frustrating. It's also hard to balance overall. One of the most fascinating, double-edged swords I've seen in card game design. Card games actually use randomness all the time. Players shuffle their decks at the beginning of games, and shuffle anytime a card either makes them look through their deck. The difference is where the randomness happens. In those games, randomness happens during the match, where everyone starts with the equal game pieces. The unpredictable moments occur after the game begins. Chaotic randomness happened long before the game begins, when you open the packs and assembled your collection, which is a very different kind of randomness, and that's what made it more controversial. As far as I've been able to find, Chaotic was the first major collectible card game to fully embrace randomized stats on its physical cards. Other games had alternate arts, foils, and promos, where the aesthetic of a card would change with no impact on gameplay, but actually changing the power level of individual copies of the same card was virtually unheard of. you have to give the chaotic designers credit for having the balls to take the risk. However, I can only think of one game that has tried it since, and it didn't go over too well, which I think speaks volumes. So were randomized stats a mistake? I think they were a mechanic designed for collectors and was an interesting experiment for its time. If your goal is to make opening packs and building a unique collection, then randomized stats are a brilliant and exciting idea in concept. But if you're trying to make a sustainable competitive card game, then I think this turns into a disaster where players continually buy new packs and singles because their completed sets are no longer, a completed collection. I think that's why players are still debating them so many years later. Designers tend to err on the safe side by keeping stats consistent across all copies of a card. But the urge to try something out that something truly like out there can often be what sets your game apart, and that's what's necessary in today's oversaturated market. They were simply one of the most ambitious experiments a trained card game had ever attempted, and whether you love them or hate them, they're one of the many reasons people still remember Chaotic today. But what do you think? Let me know down below if you like the idea of randomized stats and if you'd like to see them return or not. I'd love to hear what you think. And until next week, I'm Nate, otherwise known as Lord Thrash Zero. Peace.